the Honorable Thomas W. Harvey, who was elected President General after Sherrill and Stewart. Thomas W. Harvey of Philadelphia launched the African Project. After more African countries followed Ghana in gaining their independence, 20 or so of them, this project was to rebuild the UNIA on the continent and to provide organizational support for liberation and restoration of Africans, for those at home and those abroad. This initiative was based in Monrovia. President General Harvey selected his confidant and longtime Garveyite, Reverend Clarence W. Harding, Jr. of Chicago to lead the program. Harding moved to Liberia in 1966. He remained there until his death in 1978. Due to his works, the African Project emerged as the most successful UNIA-led initiative on the continent following Garvey's death in 1940. For the first time, the UNIA built a large, dynamic, sustainable grassroots movement in Liberia, comprised primarily of brothers and sisters who didn't have a lot of capital resources or resources. Marcus Garvey's Memorial Institute, an independent elementary and secondary school, was organized by Reverend Clarence W. Harding. Many were able to attend this school. Harding also traveled all across Africa, even to the Congo, to help build the UNIA on the continent. How many of y'all knew some of that? How many of y'all knew all of that? You see, because sometimes we get caught up in this mind bog and we listen to the wrong history. We need to get to her story, our story, and be very clear that we've been hoodwinked. We've been lied to so that you don't know your true roots. Now I can put this paper away. Now I can get back to the blacktricity that the ancestors speak, because I ain't gonna be too long, but I'm gonna be strong, because I want y'all to understand what's gonna happen today is something that started a long time ago. And even before the UNIA in 1914 was established. Y'all know Edward Wilmot Blyden? Oh, it's a whole lot of things that went on. See, Pan-Africanism came into being because of people practicing it. Not just because Henry Sylvester Williams, and a lot of times they forget all about the sisters. Y'all, who was that sister that worked tirelessly with Henry? Who? Y'all know? Y'all know? It wasn't Nannie Helen Burroughs. Who taught Nannie Helen Burroughs? Y'all got your homework to do, because I'm not going to tell you. But yes, I will. Anna Julia Cooper. Y'all hear me? See, Nannie Helen Burroughs got a street named after her. We got a street named after Anna Julia too, a Circle. Whether y'all know it or not. Oh yeah, not far from Howard University. But I want y'all to understand the consistency of the Garvey movement. Because when we had millions upon millions of Africans all over the world after 1920, after the convention, everybody was like, yeah, the Garvey movement. Even black people were saying Garvey must go, because they were jealous, envious, because Garvey was not just a historian, not just a person that came to the United States. He saw what was going on, him and Amy Ashwood and a lot of other Africans in Jamaica. But he was absolutely clear. Everywhere in the world, black people were oppressed, black people were pressured and down-pressed and stopped from dealing with our traditional greatness. So now, let me fast forward. The sixth region, y'all know the African Union talks about the sixth region all the time, right? Well, our international organizer, along with a lot of other brothers and sisters, has a group called SRDC, Sixth Region Diaspora Caucus. And they've been working hard, but they're building a library. I'm talking about a huge Pan-African library in Monrovia. And that process is underway. Land was given, thanks to the mayor at that time, Jefferson Karoji, who helped us get back to Liberia. Yes, I called his name. In fact, he called me the other day. But I say that because that brother had sincere intentions of getting the Garvey movement reestablished. And I'm not going to go too into all the politics and the politics and what has happened, because we got a whole new regime coming in now. But be very careful about not checking the history out from your perspective, because just because you have a leader in position does not mean that Urugu is not going to put pressure under them. In fact, I was in the UNIA when Samuel Doe sent representatives to the UNIA convention. And our President General sent them out. They asked them to leave after they could not answer a question of why they were communicating and doing things with the CIA. Because Samuel Doe happened to be one of those students that went to a Garvey school. Oh, yeah. So you see, just because you say you are something doesn't mean that you are. And a lot of times, those of us that might be conscious and have good intentions get bought off or get scared off. Sometimes they can't buy you off, so they scare you off. Did they not assassinate Patrice Lumumba? Huh? Thomas Sankara? I mean, we got tons of names that we could talk about, those that were assassinated that had the Malcolm X that were clear. So I want to bring you up to today. But before I do, I want you to be clear that the UNIA Rehabilitating Committee of today, under the leadership of my brother whose Earth Day is today, Baba Akili Nkrumah, was first assistant president general when I served as president general for 8 years, 2 terms. But it ain't about me, he or she, it's about we collectivity, and we understand African women got to rise up and raise. We got to allow African women to be a part of the leadership, not just in the kitchen. Brothers, you should be in the kitchen too, and the laundry room. Sometimes we always try to, sister, what you cooking for dinner? Or sister, what? No. If you look at Rwanda, look at what our sisters are doing there. So anyway, I won't get too off track, but I say this to say, because while I was president general, we were successfully able to reestablish a division in Liberia. And unfortunately, that division is not under the leadership today of the Rehabilitating Committee. However, a lot of the members are tied to our division in Sierra Leone with our High Commissioner. Listen carefully, our High Commissioner General, Chief Fode, who's an expatriate living in Sierra Leone and understands the history of Sierra Leone and Liberia and he's a gut. And a lot of us Africans in the United States don't want to say it, but all of us, somebody got Gullah Geechee in their family. 70 to 80% of the Africans in North America are tied to Gullah Geechee culture. That comes out of West Africa, though. So the connection of Sierra Leone, South Carolina, and all the other places where Gullahs are spread all over. And remember, Africans migrated from the south to the north. I know my people came from the Kakalakis, North Kakalaki and South Kakalaki. And I know most of y'all, some people lived in the Midwest, your brothers and sisters, your family came from the South too, even in California. But anyway, let me get back on track. Ain't gonna be too much longer, Putu. Everything cool? So it's important, I want to keep making it plain, as Malcolm said, let's make it plain. Because Malcolm's history is important to what we know as the Black Star Action Network International, which is a Garveyite institution that I happen to be a part of, and Chief Fode helped found that. And Malcolm X's grandson, who a lot of people don't like to talk about because of things that happened in his youth with Betty, we want to hail him up too, because he was coming into his consciousness and he helped establish the Black Star Action Network. Okay? And he was assassinated in Mexico. Chief Fode went to Sierra Leone and is living in Sierra Leone, and he's our High Commissioner General of West Africa. So not only today are we in Sierra Leone, we're in Gambia. There's a Pan-African library there. It's not as large as the one we're trying to put up in Liberia. We're in Lagos, Nigeria. We're in Ghana, and not just in Accra, not just in Prom Prom, but up on the north end. And there's a whole lot of history to Ghanaian or Africans in the northern part of Ghana that people need to do a little history on too, because they was always supportive of Kwame Nkrumah. Y'all hear me? Well, that's our division there. And then we also have a division outside of West Africa in Kenya. So even under Marcus Garvey, who wanted to take the government of the UNIA to Liberia and build all of Africa, was not able to complete that mission. That mission is continuing. And that's the point I want y'all to really recognize. Now, y'all heard me talk about the 1920s, the 1920s, the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. Let's talk about 21st century. So we got a division that was established in Liberia. So we have Africans there. Let me say this, and this is important. Most people don't know that when the Hebrew Israelites under Ben Ami went to Africa before they went to Israel, to Mona, they dropped off in Liberia. And it's the Garveyites, I'm told by the leadership of that group, who I know some of them, and I'm not going to call names because there's a lot that's been going on with infiltration, et cetera, but the point of the matter is Garveyites helped those African brothers and sisters survive because they didn't have much. They were struggling to survive. And these were Garveyites that were in the bush, not in the cities. So you understand, because the ancestral energy is aware of what needs to be done, and we still searching, and we still too apathetic and don't understand the real reason why we're here. We're not here to have big air-conditioned homes, Mercedes-Benz. We're here to rebuild and return to our traditional greatness. Now, that's not knocking y'all that got air conditioners and all like that, but we want to return to our traditional greatness. And we see all this stuff going on around the world. I'm rapping right here. All this stuff going on around the world. This is very, very important. The educational aspect of the UNIA Rehabilitating Committee is on the loose. And we built it because we've been miseducated. And we have to educate not only our children, but we have to educate adults, Africans, all the leaders. So what we have is what we call a Mahat agreement that we are working on with different entities. But we are building with brothers and sisters because we know everybody not clear and not everybody not going to join the government of the UNIA. But the government of the UNIA knows that you are an active member. We're working for you. So be clear. We totally endorse everything else you get ready to hear. And we are totally behind it. And we're not just talking about Washington, D.C. division. We're talking about the government everywhere I just mentioned is totally behind our good brother Putu and what he's doing, Brother Sam. How many brothers and sisters that got Liberian roots or African roots in Liberia? Raise your hand. Woo! 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 All of y'all, just about. That's good. So anyway, I got a book here. And you can get it here at Sankofa. But you'll find some things in that will help explain what has happened. Because sometimes people say, well, the UNIA is fragmented. No, it's not fragmented. Those of us that are very clear who took the course from those who took the course from Marcus Garvey are absolutely clear. And we want to meet everybody who calls themselves Garveyites, Pan-Africanists at the work table. So we firmly endorse everything else that you're going to get ready to hear. And believe me, we've already won. We wallow in defeat because we don't know who we are. We already won. Or people say, oh, how's that possible? I just told y'all, we spiritual beings have a physical experience. So we lose the battle physically because we don't understand who we are spiritually. Spiritually, we won. They cannot defeat us. We've been licked, kicked, abused, drugged, robbed, and everything. We're still here, aren't we? Thank you, Sankofa, for being who you are. I brought things to prove some of the things I said to you real quickly. That's a picture from Liberia of the Marcus Garvey School. And it is clearly Education for Liberation. These are Garvey voices. This was 1973, and this is this. So I don't just talk that talk. This is a memorandum of understanding that we sent to the United Nations. So it's all documented, everything I said, and it's a whole lot more. And we still are writing. Like Renoko Rashidi and Tony Martin made it clear to us. We got to write our own story. And we're working on it. And it may not be in a book. It'll be online, though. We coming. Up, you mighty race.
Up, accomplish what you
do.
Up, you give it up for Baba Sanko Day. Come on. We're gonna make this place something. Now let's see who really got some Liberian roots. Yeah, yeah.
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 Okay. That's a call to response. I'd like to take the time to acknowledge some special guests that we have in the building. We have the leaders of the Liberians within the DC Metro Atlanta area, the president, Mrs. Wilma Red, along with Mr. John Pearson, the vice president. We'll give it up. And I would like to definitely thank them for being a part of this occasion, being present here on very short notice. Okay, just a little for you to understand again what's happening. We say the Renaissance Plan. It's a combination of plans, okay, technologies, information, education that as the Liberian people of this time, this generation, take ownership of, we can develop the nation that we always wanted, okay? The Liberian Renaissance Plan. This Renaissance Plan can be adapted to other places around the world, around the continent, but because of the nature of what we're focusing at this particular point right now, we call it the Liberian Renaissance Plan. And there are chapters of Liberian associations all across the states, all around the world even, but within the states you have DC, you have Atlanta, Minnesota, and with what we are doing, we want to make sure that we are doing it in unison with these leaders wherever they may be. So I'd like to thank you all for taking the time. I really appreciate that, okay? So on that note, I'd like to introduce somebody who some of you already may be familiar with, to share some information about some very, very, very significant things that are going on in terms of the relationship when we look at U.S.-Africa relationships. We know there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening, and we have to be aware. And I will leave it at that for right now, and I would like to introduce Brother Sam Collins to the stage. Y'all give it up for Brother Sam.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks for coming out. How y'all doing? Before I start, I just want to acknowledge a few ancestors, if y'all don't mind. Yema Yene Collins, my great-grandmother, Waplo Collins, Peter Ploquia Seaton, after whom I'm named, Ma Minnie Cooper of West Point, Klein Cooper. I also want to acknowledge Ma Myra Moulton, who pointed out Liberia on the map to me when I was little. I want to point out Mother Agnes Gibson Doe, Mother Annie Gibson of the Little White Chapel by the Wayside. I also want to acknowledge Mother Smite, definitely Mother Smite. Yeah, she was a praying woman. I definitely want to bring the ancestors in the space to acknowledge them, because it is on their shoulders who we stand as Liberian people and as, African people in general. In terms of my presentation tonight, I don't want to take too much time, but I want to bring everything into modern context. I want to focus in particular on the U.S.-Africa Summit. That was a very nominal event that took place about a year and a half ago, let's say about a year and a month ago. And that event, which took place at the end of 2022, if I recall correctly, that came at a time when the Biden-Harris administration was trying to pretty much make up for what Donald Trump had done in terms of ruining U.S.-Africa relations. Now, when I talk about ruining it, that is a relative term, because U.S.-Africa relations, for those of us who identify as Pan-Africanists, has been exploitative. And when you're talking about geopolitics, there is never really a free lunch. But what Donald Trump has done in terms of calling African countries S-holes and things of that like, was pretty much soured those relations. And as he was doing that, China, Russia, and India, to an extent, they did what they did in terms of strengthening their relations with the African nations. So what the United States was attempting to do during the winter or the end of 2022 was to reestablish those relationships. And it did so at a time when Burkina Faso, Mali, and other nations were bucking neocolonialism. And they did so with U.S. resources, because if you go on Capitol Hill, if you go on the Senate, the House, whatever the case is, U.S. military leaders had to answer questions about why is it that these leaders in Burkina Faso and Mali that are being trained in AFRICOM, why is it that they're using our resources, our training to take down the French? But, and all of that is interconnected. I'm speaking to you as a Garveyite, who studied under Baba Senghor, who studied under Charles L. James, who studied under the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. I got to put that out there. But I'm also coming to you as a Pan-African Federalist in the sense that we're not just talking about Liberia, we're talking about the entire African continent and the diaspora. So it's a question of what the United States is doing. They're not doing it alone. They're doing it with their international partners. Their partners being Canada, their partners being the French, being the British, and NATO, for that matter. Because this is at a time with the Ukraine-Russia conflict happening, and even when you talk about China, Liberia, at some point in time, they had a non-interference policy, but they bucked at their Chinese partner at the behalf of the United States not too long ago, right? And then also when we talk about the conflict happening in Gaza, Liberia sided with the U.S. to an extent to not bring Israel up on genocide or whatever the case is. So, when we're talking about international relations, we're talking about proxy wars. We got to talk, the truth about, as far as, once again, they're not really being a free lunch, right? And once again, we're at a time where the concept of Pan-Africanism, so during, going back as far as Martin Delaney's time when it was Black nationalism, and, Pan-Africanism, the term, how it came out of, the conferences and all of that, that notwithstanding, it was more of a grassroots movement. It was an anti-establishment movement. But you see the Biden-Harris administration, they're co-opting that right now. So with the year of return in Ghana, you had 2022 with the 200th anniversary of the ACS and whatever else. You have U.S. dignitaries coming to Liberia to recognize that, but also at the same time to take that spirit and to use that, for their own means. So I'm saying all of this to encourage us, because Liberia, despite its the intentions, in its founding, I want to say that the spirit of Pan-Africanism was always alive in Liberia. Pan-Africanism has always been alive before Pan-Africanism was there. John chapter 1 tells us, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, so forth and so on. So long before any concept is there, it is there in spirit. So we were always united, even with outside forces trying to balkanize us. And I'm going to wrap this up by saying this. If you listened on Monday, and thank you, President Red, for dropping the link to the speech, to the inauguration speech. I really appreciate that. Very appreciate that. Our newly inaugurated president, Joseph Boyka, if you listen to the speech, and part of the speech, he questioned the U.S.-Liberia relationship in the sense he was trying to assess what was Liberia getting out of it, right? And not to say that he was going to cut off ties, but in making that, he also assessed what it was that Liberians were doing with the U.S. funds. So it's a question, and tonight's presentation is going to speak to that. How do we as Liberian people and African people in general take this energy in the grassroots in order to do for ourselves? Because by the end of the day, as Baba Senghor and Brother Putu touched on to some extent, there are actors in blackface who are using the moment to work against us for their own interests. But we can prevail, we have prevailed, and we have to prevail. And I'm very excited, to look at tonight's presentation, because tonight's presentation speaks about what happens in the grassroots as far as pouring our own money into our own resources to do for ourselves. Because, and just to wrap this up, what came out of the U.S.-Africa Summit were deals. Now, in years past, it was about extraction of raw materials out of the continent to make the products to sell back to the continent. And a lot of the countries that were involved in the summit, a lot of that extraction is going to happen on the ground in factories that are being ran by our people, but these projects are being financed by the United States to the tune of $55 billion. So once again, this is a relationship, once again, that the Biden-Harris administration is making to make up for what Donald Trump did in him being his honest, whatever self he is being, whatever that was, but they're making up for that. But the question is, how do we as African people, and I say African because Liberia is a beacon of Pan-Africanism. We cannot forget about that. You know, no offense to Ghana, no offense to Kenya. We can't let them take the mantle alone because Liberia was that place. Mary McLeod Bethune, Booker T. Washington, what's my man name that went to Maryland County? John B. Rushworm. Come on, man. They all went down there to touch down across the Atlantic. Long before, while Liberia was one of the two countries that had nominal sovereignty, that was the place to be. So we got to recognize that, and we got to work in that spirit. And I'll end this right here, Brother Kusuf, I promise you. We got to understand, whenever the colonizing governments take Pan-Africanism, you have to be worried. Pan-Africanism has to stay true to the grassroots. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Up. Thank you so much for that, Brother Sam. And, you know, y'all can prepare to bring our guest who is with us virtually, because we're going to change up things a little bit just for the sake of time. It's very important to know your history, because if you don't know the past, right, and you don't know the lessons of the past, right, you're doomed to what? Repeat it. So when we say that, it's important to understand and recognize Liberia's history. Freetown, Sierra Leone. It was the difference between that as Liberia, the colony of Liberia, germinated into a nation state. Okay, Freetown was before. Okay, we have to recognize people like Paul Coffey. Okay, we have to understand that the American Colonization Society, the people behind it, okay, they did not intend to say, okay, let's free the African Americans and let them go. No, there was intentions behind it. And when we look at Liberia's history, the way that it's told, it's often told in a way that spurs division. Okay, because when we hear about Liberia, when we talk about Liberia, okay, the free slaves went to Africa and they enslaved the natives over there, and leave it at that. What reputation does that leave, okay, for the rest of the Africans to interpret of African Americans? Okay. In other words, what I'm saying is that when we look at the modern day relationship or rift that there is between Africans and African Americans, a huge part of that is because of the story that has been told about Liberia, okay, in terms of how the rest of Africans and Africans around the world see African Americans, because of what they hear that, oh, those free slaves, they went and they enslaved the Africans over there. But there's much more to the story, okay? We also got to recognize that there were systems, there were kingdoms before the natives came there. There were people over there, okay? There were traditions, there was religion, there was things that did exist. So we have to acknowledge that. The only thing that happened in 1847 when Liberia declared its independence on July 26th was that the new world order at that time, okay, with the new nations were forming, Liberia declared its independence and enshrined within this constitution a Negro clause, okay? A Negro clause which ended up protecting Liberia during the scramble of Africa that happened in the 1880s when the European countries were going over and taking over the rest of the African nations. All right? Brother Sam, are we able to bring in Brother Ken? Okay, it's on the way. Okay, as we get into that. So, as we get it together, right? It's so important right now, right, for us to know this history because of what's going on right now. Okay, there's another world is shifting. You're seeing a pivot from Western dominance to what? Like Eastern dominance. We're hearing talks of BRICS, right? Okay, whenever there is a shift in the world order, whenever there is conflict going on, right? All right, whenever there's a rise in technology, right? There are the people who take lead, the countries and companies who take lead, who want to lead that revolution, who want to lead that, who want to control the economics in that new world order. Okay? This is why World War I occurred, World War II. And some say we're in the beginning stages of World War III, right? So it is important for us as Africans to be producers and not consumers. And that is exactly why we have, I guess, who's about to come in, a brother by the name of Ken Eccles, okay, who has connected and understands the importance of Pan-Africanism, understands the importance of production. But not only that, this guy is an expert in engineering, inventing. This guy here is an individual who is prepared to utilize his knowledge and know-how. And that's why I'm so happy that we have some leaders within the community who are here, because we want to connect the dots with the leaders here in DC, Minnesota, Atlanta, and connect with people like Ken, who we have 3D, et cetera. We have 3D, et cetera, of Liberia. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ken Eccles to share with you all what it means to be producers and not consumers. And not only just talk about it, but how we're going to get it done, okay? And we're going to have that discussion, Brother Ken.
Right on, right on. Greetings, everyone. Greetings. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me? Check, check. Mic check.
a refugee. Now, for those of y'all know, a refugee is because it has not made its way into our everyday life, or we don't even realize that we are utilizing that technology. It's being developed, right? And then by the time you look, it's developed and you don't even know, we don't, as a people, we don't even understand the depth of it. And now it's being sold to us and packaged to us, and we just have to go with the trend. So what if now what if we had the opportunity to get knowledge, to become more knowledgeable about these technologies, these significant technologies that are changing the world and are going to be the bedrock by which the new world is going to be built on. If we are able to get a hold of it, right, and to share the knowledge and start teaching the youth, right, the young people coming up, right, we will not, what, be left behind, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, at the time we are living in right now, and at the speed by which technology is accelerating, okay, especially with this thing we call AI, right? The way that is moving, right? If we, as a people, right, the people who have been oppressed and left behind in the past, do not get a hold of it, right, and build structures and participate in the development of it, these very same technologies that are being developed are going to be used against us, right? And this time around, the gap that is going to be created between those who know how to utilize that technology for your own good, for its own good, versus those who are utilizing that technology, right? The gap that is going to be created if we don't take charge right now, it's going to be so wide and large that we will not ever be able to catch up. So, in essence, what we are saying right here, this is a battle right now, okay? It's not even just for our lifetime. For those of you who have kids and grandkids, if we do not step up right now, literally like yesterday, okay, it's over for them. What type of world are we leaving for them? And then we sit back and wonder why they're angry. Because they know that there were things that could have been done before in their generation that are left undone, and they're left. The battle the kids are fighting right now with the social media, the internet. These technologies, the social media, the internet, right? It's being used, what? Against us, right? Yeah. So we are saying here now, are we good, brother? We good? Okay. I just want to know, so okay. So this movement here that we have right now is about closing the ranks and connecting the dots. Because within our network, we have people who are experts within the world of blockchain, experts within the world of 3D printing, experts within the world of vertical farming, okay? These are technologies here that are being developed that we have to take hold of and control our own destiny and build ourselves up in the near future. So that's what this whole Liberian Renaissance is all about. Now, as we prepare to get there, I'm just going to set the tone for you all to let you all know some things that are going on, why this is so important. I forgot to mention renewable energy, how important that is. Renewable energy, solar, hydro, right? Okay. Who's aware of what's going on in Texas right now? You? Few of you all? Okay. Right now, in Texas, there's a crisis emerging. Y'all familiar? Y'all heard about the migrants that are coming into the country, right? Okay. A few days ago, the governor of Texas put a statement out to Biden, the federal government, saying that, hey, if y'all don't take care, or not going to, pretty much saying that if you are not taking care of this border issue here, we, as a state, we have the right to take care. We don't hear what y'all say. This is what Texas is saying, federal government. And not only that, guess how many other states, governors, agreed with him? Okay, you know, I want to take a wild guess. Take a wild guess. Throw a number out there. 2, 3, 10. 25. That's what? Half the country, right? So you have half the country over here, half the country over here. What is that? We call a divide or civil war. Well, Ken, we good? Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Okay. There we go. Speaking of Texas. How you feeling, man?
How you doing, brother?
All right, man.
How's everything?
All right, let's get this conversation going, man. Y'all give it up for the Ken. So we're gonna have the conversation, man. And hear a little bit of what we're saying.
Yes, my apologies for earlier. I thought I was having some difficulties.
Okay, so just telling them about what's going on. Can y'all still hear me?
You're fine. I can hear you too when you put it down.
Yeah, I wanna is it turned off?
It's not the mic.
Is a delay on
So hit the speaker.
Okay. All right. Going back.
You can now.
You can hear.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
So when he's speaking, his mic, and then when you speak,
Okay. When I point to him, all right. Hey, take the floor, brother Ken.
So I'm assuming you want me to go in a little bit about the Renaissance plan and what our plans are. Earlier on, as we've connected with so many of us in the diaspora, I've recognized that there is a chokehold on the continent, the whole diaspora, actually. And what I recognize and what I'm going to do is recognize things from an engineering standpoint. So, just to give you a little background about me, I'm an electrical engineer. I have been in education for up to 15 years, teaching mathematics and STEM. I have experience in web development and software, IT, renewable energy, especially now for the past 20 years, renewable energy, and even more so now, additive manufacturing, which is basically a fancy way of saying 3D printing, right? And so what I'm used to always doing is finding a solution to problems. This is just how, if you know any engineers, we are problem solvers. And so as I've spoken to more and more people in diaspora, we've seen that, I've recognized that our first chokehold is in us being consumers and not producers, right? We are set up to be consumers and not producers, and this is by design. And so what we have to do is creatively figure out how we can reverse that. We need to tip the scales. And so what we look at is launching this Renaissance plan. This is the whole point of the Renaissance plan. It's to help us move from out of this dark ages. We've been stuck. If you've noticed, everyone has had an industrial revolution but us. Africa is the only one that has been left behind, and we need to change that. And so some of the initiatives of the Renaissance plan involve us becoming our own energy companies, self-sustainability with using renewable energy and energy storage, We want to change the face of construction. We want to introduce 3D printing of homes. If you have heard that before, that is a thing. You can actually 3D print a house if you are not aware. We also want to look in changing agriculture as we know it and integrate a lot more technology into the foundation of agriculture. We will get more into that. We want to look at water harvesting and purification. And last but certainly not least, we want to look at changing the scope of manufacturing in Africa. It's interesting because I always speak to people about the condition of Africa, and it's unfortunate that we have a backyard. So we have Africa's our house, and we have our backyard, and in our backyard we have all these great resources. And right now, countries like China is coming into our backyard, digging up our soil and our sandbox in our backyard. They're taking it and they're processing that soil, and they're coming back and they're selling it back to us. And that's really unfortunate, and that's ridiculous. But the great thing is we have a plan on how we're going to change that. And I'll give it back over to you, Pudo.
So a quick question: Are you, Sis Michaela, are you manually doing it back and forth, or we can?
No, I have to menu. You aren't able to converse together at the same time.
We're not able to, or we are?
You are not able.
Oh, we're not. Okay. But he can hear. Okay. So thanks for that backdrop over there, Brother Ken. I know you can hear. Now, let's start to make it real. Let's start to make it tangible, right? Okay. Let's talk about blockchain. When we talk about one of the ills facing Liberia and other African nations around the world, one of the more popular ills that we always hear is corruption. Right? Who's heard that word before? Corruption. Man, that's Liberians' favorite word. Oh, corruption, corrupt. Now, during the last president's administration, they call him Bad Road Medicine. That was his nickname. Some people saw him as Bad Road Medicine. That was saying to him that he was fixing the roads. He fixed the bad roads, Bad Road Medicine. But there might be something that we can call corruption medicine. Okay? And I'm saying this to we have some Liberian leaders here, because this is something that not also faces the government. This is organizations, okay? This is SUSUs, Okay, how can, Brother Ken, how can this thing that we call blockchain, utilizing its open ledger characteristics and transparency, revolutionize the way that we see politics? All right?
So that's a great question, Pudu. All right. So first, let's kind of lay down the foundation of what is blockchain so everyone understands. If you guys have all been hearing about cryptocurrency, at some point we all should have heard about cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is an application that lives on a blockchain system, right? So a blockchain is simply an ecosystem, kind of like an operating system. For example, we'll use Windows. Windows is the operating system, and something like Microsoft Office is the application that is residing on top of the operating system. So this is the same way that cryptocurrency works. Cryptocurrency is just an application. It's just a piece of the big picture, and the blockchain itself is the big picture. So we start talking about how can blockchain help? Well, there are so many different applications that we can develop for blockchain. Number one, let's talk about why blockchain was created. With the privatized banking system, there is a lot of, and we're talking about that C word again, corruption, right? And unfortunately, because we're dealing with a privatized banking system, they have control. At the end of the day, they can control more about our money than we can control ourselves when we bank with these different institutions. And so what they did when these people created Bitcoin, for example, They created an ecosystem that is tried and true. There's no back doors. There's no under the table. You create a structure with a set of rules that's governed to work the same way all the time. There's no cheating of the system. And so all the other blockchain structures are working the same way. They're transparent, right? So for example, any transaction that occurs on the blockchain, it's there and everybody can see it. Now, there's anonymity. You can't see who it is, but you can see that it actually happened, right? So what's important about that is it's a ledger that shows this event A happened, this event B happened, this event C happened, so on and so forth, and it absolutely is there. All right, so why is that important for us? When we're talking about the blockchain, and we're talking about transparency, and we're talking about not being able to cheat systems, we can start to build out applications like voting systems, for example, that are often cheated, that will actually work the way we design them to work. So imagine a voting system where we can log on with our phone and it's encrypted and protected. And instead of your voter registration card, it's inside of your device. And you can cast that ballot and it would actually count for what it's supposed to count for. Back to you, Pudu.
Y'all can hear me, right? I don't need the mic. Blockchain, voting, transparency. What often happens in Liberia, in certain places, they got what they call brown envelopes, right? Brown envelopes. Giving money out off the books. People don't know where the money is going. Nobody knows anything in a brown envelope, right? Within a blockchain system, right? If the World Bank or any institution gives out $10 million or $16 billion, which is, they say $16 billion got missing sometimes ago in Liberia, one of the many stories, right? Everybody knows that the announcement has been made, but there's a system, an open ledger where people can see that, okay, the World Bank or the IMF gives 16 billion and it was supposed to go to the Liberian government. Then it was supposed to go, this 5 million was supposed to go to for education. 4 million was supposed to go for health. Down. You can see the chain of it actually happening to where nobody will be able to say that it did not happen, or nobody will be able to cheat the system. Okay? So we're talking about transparency. This is what blockchain is. The only thing that has happened now is it's been introduced to us, the public, and we only know about cryptocurrency more so because it has to do with money and finances. And the system, the people who have already been controlling things have been trying to regulate and find a way of how they can control it before they give it out release it all out to the people for people to utilize it in the way that it's supposed to be used. Okay? So we talk about control. Now, what if we have our own blockchain systems and building out our own applications to do exactly what we need to do for it? That's what we are talking about. Instead of standing on the sideline and just letting all these technology being built up, and then they're building up applications and telling us, okay, now y'all come on our application, because that again will lead to more control. All right? So blockchain technology. All right, let's move on to another issue. We're talking about the problems, but we're bringing the solutions. Let's talk about this thing we call energy. One of the biggest problems in Liberia is electricity, energy. Right now in Liberia, at this time right now, if you don't have a generator, even if you don't have gas, you don't have lights, you don't have any electricity. People don't have refrigerators where they can save food for 2-3 days. Okay? People are not using electricity. They don't have big grids like in other developed countries. But we have sunlight, right? We have water, right? So right there you have solar power, we have hydro, right? We have wind, right? How can we, Brother Ken, this is a question for you now. How can we utilize and maximize our potential using renewable energy? Let's start off with the solar, Brother Ken.
All right. So the energy aspect. Actually, we can hit everything with the same swing, and this is basically the swing. No one is brand new to renewable energy, I believe. For the most part, I think everybody understands that there's wind turbines that exist and there's solar panels that exist, but the problem is they don't know how to utilize it. And so that one big swing that I'm talking about now is education. The biggest impact that we can have on the continent is to take those areas of expertise that we have. For example, here in the United States, all of us are experts in our field, and we need to start putting that expertise to practice over in the continent. So it's not that they don't know it exists, but they don't know how to manipulate it. And so what we will do proactively is come in to provide resources, or excuse me, when I say resources, provide products that are accessible, right? So we're talking about simple products, simple off-grid products, which is the key here. Off-grid, meaning it's not dependent on the grid. When you have people that force blackouts and brownouts on purpose, when you're off-grid, you can maintain for yourself. Well, you are that S word, self-sustainable, right? Which is what we drive at. So what we look to do is bring in those type of products, number one. Number two, educate the people on how to utilize these products and teach them how to be self-reliant, right? And so that's what it's all going to come down to, is the big piece there is educating the people. And so we will put plans in place to initiatives to educate. If we're talking about in curriculum, if we're talking about offering services, if we're talking about collaboration with grassroots level, business level, government level, you have it. We'll do it. Back to you, Pudu.
Where's the lights? Can somebody touch the lights temporarily? Please, I want to show something. Okay. Solar power, right? It's just one form of renewable energy. Yeah, turn the lights off, Brother Sam. Is it possible to turn these lights off? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Temporarily, just want to show you, do a demonstration real quick. I thought it was just a switch. All right. You see this right here? This is a solar power street light. It can actually be used inside as well. Now, you'll see how bright, if these other lights were all, maybe y'all could see the brightness, but y'all can see it. Y'all can see it? Black, right? Sister Erica, you was in Liberia some months ago, right? Were there some time that there was no lights? Right? What would something like this do, right? That we just pull it out of the box, right? All you have to do is press a button, right? Right? Press a button, right? You have these lights. Okay? You have people who are getting killed on the roads because there's no lights. Okay? When we have solutions like this, all right? These are some of the products that we have at 3D, etc. right now. Okay? These are things that if you know somebody that is going to Liberia tomorrow, you can contact us, right? And say, hey, Utu, Ken, I need 10 of those street lights to go light up a community. You can have these lights over here and go and put a solution tomorrow. This is what we talk about by taking initiative and not complaining and saying, oh, the government not doing this, or oh, the government is not doing this, no lights, no this. Because one problem that we have as a people, I would just speak about Liberians in this case, right, is we complain a lot. And what we're doing right now, we're saying we're training ourselves to be self-sufficient, to self-sustainable. All right? If you see there's a problem, if you see there's something, how can you bring change to it? We just solved the issue of fraud in voting, the blockchain. Okay? We just solved a light problem. Okay? These are just some of the smaller ones. We have bigger ones that can go the size of billboards. Okay? This is just in the area of solar lights, not even solar batteries and systems. Okay? These are things that we are supplying for our people. These, by the way, you get these for $55. Okay? If you want to do bulk, if you are an organization, you want to go light up a school, huh? Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to go light up a school. You want to go light up a church. You want to go light up a community. This is what we're talking about. Nobody should be going to Liberia, all right, on vacation or just to go have fun without taking solutions like this, simple solutions. You don't have to get wholesale. You can take 1, 2, 3, all right, and go solve a problem. Go put this in a hospital. Go put this in a clinic, okay? This is just one, okay? So you got it, all right? We have these lights here available. We have solar battery packs, other. All right. Speaking of homes, buildings, things of that nature, let's get into the area of building up infrastructure, okay? Well, this next one that we're talking about, it ranges from small manufacturing, small little goods, to buildings. But I would let Brother Ken, let's focus on the buildings, all right? Let's talk about 3D printing in the area of construction and how we can revolutionize our architecture, right? Overnight with this technology, 3D printing in the area of construction. Brother Ken, let's go.
All right, so what I'll do is first introduce 3D printing just so everybody really clearly knows, because I often ask people if they know what 3D printing is, and just hearing the word printing, it has you in the mind state of dealing with paper, but that's not what it is. Semantics are everything. It really should be called 3D making, right? But you know, it's trendy, 3D printing. And so basically this is what 3D printing is. 3D printing is a means of manufacturing. It's a way that you can make things, right? We can, now we can kind of streamline the processes to where we can take control of creating our own products. Traditionally, if you go to some company, they're a manufacturer, you go with an idea and you want to take it to them and they're going to create it and develop the idea. And at some point, some kind of way, some magic way, they produce that product for you, right? Well, now it's amazing because we can do these things ourselves. I can do these types of things in my own office, in my own home. For example, if I wanted to recreate African art, I could. I could design a mask, right? And I could put that design that I've created through a machine, right? And if you can see behind me, this little box right here, this little gray box, that's an example of one of the 3D printers that I have. And so basically, you run the design through this box, through the software, and it gives it instructions. And basically, you can make in different types of materials. The most common one is polymers, plastics, right? And so let's just say I took that African mask and I did a design and I put it in my machine. And then once it runs, after a while, you'll get a finished product. So this is an example of an African mask that was designed and 3D printed. This is rigid plastic. It will not break. That is not the limit. There are so many different things that we can do with 3D printing. But for the Pudu said, let's talk about houses, buildings, infrastructure, right? So the same way that we made that mask, we could also design a house, right? And instead of using plastic, number one, we can take that machine, that same machine like I have in the back, and we can scale it up to the size of a building, right? We can make that machine the size of a building, and we can pump cement through it. And so now, instead of building stuff out of plastic, what it's going to do is build homes out of concrete. So what I'm going to attempt to do, if it'll allow, I will share a quick video with you guys about that very thing. Let's see if we can get this going. This is just an example of the machine laying down beads or layers of concrete. This machine is actually forming the walls that created this house. So like they're showing you, this is a 1,300 plus square foot house, all made from concrete. Now, this is nothing different than what people have been doing for centuries. We're used to adobe homes. We're used to brick homes. This is just a more streamlined process that can be expedited and can minimize costs as well as waste. And it doesn't require as much resources to produce. As a matter of fact, when we talk about expediting the process, you can make the walls and the structures for these homes. Normally, a traditional 1,500 square foot wood framed house might take you about 2 or 3 months to produce. You can actually produce that same equivalent walls in about 3 or 4 days, utilizing 3D printing and these technologies. So imagine us being able to go in and change the scope of people's lives for the same price of these small homes that they make. We can produce something that is a lot more withstanding to the elements and to everything else, especially when we're talking about natural disasters, high winds, and everything else. Back to you, Prue.
Difference. On that note, let's take it back a little bit before we gotta. Y'all know, shorthand, longhand. Who knows the relevance of that? Okay, for those of y'all who don't know, right? There's a lot of amputees. Okay, in Liberia, and Sierra Leone, and other places too as well, right? Due to the war. Okay, now. What can we do with 3D printing when it comes to what we call it, right? What is it called?
Prosthetics.
Prosthetics. Touch on that, Brother Ken.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're probably all pretty close to someone. We know someone that is an amputee. I had an uncle that was in Okinawa. He was in the war, and he was amputee from his knee down. And so we realized that many people with these disabilities now, a piece of that normality is taken away from them, right? But the amazing thing about 3D printing is we can bring it back to them. And so we'll revisit that concept of the mask. Yes.
Back over there was
Run it back. All right. So I believe you were saying you wanted me to start over. So we're talking about prosthetics and the importance that they play. People who have experienced these tragedies have a piece of that normality has been taken away from them, but we can bring it back to them. So when we talk about revisiting the process for making that mask, remember, 3D printing is all about making literally anything, right? I mean, people will say, Ken, what can you make? I mean, when I say you anything, and I know it's such a broad term to use, but anything, whatever you are only limited by your imagination. So imagine that we want to go into the continent and we want to help all those loved ones that we have that are amputees. We can do that. Well, how can we do that? Prosthetics are so expensive. They are, but we can minimize those costs utilizing streamlined processes like 3D printing. So what I'll show you is a 3D printed prosthetic, right? If you can see, this is a hand. Everybody can see that. This is all polymer. This is low level. This is plastic, but this is for the point of showing functionality. Imagine that you had an amputee that did not have a hand, but they could still strap this onto their arm, right? And it articulates. So if you pay attention, the hands can actually close and grasp things as it flexes at the wrist. These are those simple kinds of concepts that we can put into the communities to change the lives of our people in the diaspora. They are not there simply because they have not been exposed to this. And we plan on changing that. Back to you, Poodle.
Y'all gotta give it up for him there, because he didn't tell you, but that's something that he made. You know, and you see his whole workshop back there is like, sometimes he just, you know, it comes so easy that, guess it, that was a hand that was made, you know, and we are all about connecting the dots. This is somebody here, you know, we have our, you know, we have building up, in the process of building up the factory. We want to make ourselves available to the community, all right, to organizations, to people who say, hey, I have an idea. Hey, can we do this? What will it take to do this, this, and that, third? We are bringing it to the people, okay? Often on social media, we follow the dramatics, we follow the negative and all of that, but we are saying, hey, let's give the solutions to our people. And we need help, okay? We need help. We know our people need help, all right? On that note, next, right? The new president of Liberia used to be the Minister of Agriculture some years back. Yes, he was also the vice president as well, but he was the Minister of Agriculture. Maybe, just maybe, he might be interested in investing in the next topic that we're getting ready to talk about. It's called vertical farming. Brother Ken, can you share a little bit of information about this concept?
Vertical farming. All right, so we have a couple areas that are pretty crucial for us, right? We talk about clean water, we talk about energy, we talk about food. Those are our necessities when we're talking about survivability. And so one of the things that we're plagued with in certain areas is that our soil content may not be suitable for good farming, or we're limited in the amount of acreage or hectares that we have, or there's always some obstacle, right? What's cool is we can always find a solution, and the solution with agriculture involves injecting a little bit of technology into it. So when we talk about the continent specifically, we all know that it is rich with resources, these ores, right? And those ores, unfortunately, can kind of taint the quality of our soil, and it limits what we can produce, how much we can produce, and the quality of what we produce. But we can change that by introducing a concept called vertical growth farming. And many of you may have already heard of this. It involves hydroponics. And hydroponics is simply a concept of farming without soil. It's soilless farming. So you say, well, how the heck can we farm without soil? You have to keep in mind, for any of you that are in agriculture, you can remind others, the purpose of the soil, it does a couple of things, but two main things. It's a placeholder. It holds the plant there at the roots, but more importantly, it delivers the nutrients, right? And so how we can eliminate soil is by finding a different means by which we introduce those nutrients. So this is what vertical growth farming is. Imagine tubes or towers growing upward, right? And we have a set of pods on each side where we plant those seedlings, and they grow inside of the material that might hold it, depending on what material we choose to go with. And it's basically a fancy vertical aquarium. So imagine how aquariums push solutions of the water, it pumps the water back and through. This is the same thing we can do to create vertical farming. So what I'll do again is I'll share my screen so I can show you some examples, some real life examples of vertical farming. All right. So this is a big warehouse where This company is pushing the concept of hydroponics or soilless growing. And look at this. This is huge. They have rows and rows of these tomatoes that they're growing. And the amazing thing is, this is a controlled environment. There's no pesticides needed to drive off insects. You can control the humidity levels. You can control the temperature. You can control everything. You can make the whole atmosphere that you grow in completely perfect. You can dial it in down to whatever your requirements are. I'll show you another example. These are the specific, this is specifically showing you how these towers are staged, right? So these are all just plastic tubes with solutions of nutrients in the water circulating over the roots inside of these tubes. That's all that's going on right here, right? I'll show you a different example. Maybe it'll be a little bit more clear than that one. Here's another example. Again, if you see the trend, this is a warehouse. This is a huge warehouse that's been turned into a greenhouse. And they've staged all of these pods with these vertical grow towers. And you can see here in the front, this is just a plain old plastic tube. Imagine a PVC pipe like we use for plumbing. They have holes staggered around each one that are basically holding the pods of the seedlings. And at the top, at the bottom, excuse me, you have these tanks. This is the storage of the nutrients and the solutions that are circulating with inside the tube. Again, these are those things that many of us in the diaspora are not exposed to, but we will change that. Finally, for once. Back to you, Pudu.
Man, so we covered blockchain, we covered 3D printing, we covered vertical farming. Let's see who was paying attention. What else did we cover? Yeah, 3D printing. Okay, I give you a little hint, right? Just to let you know, we sent a few samples on the ground. This right here, one of the motorcyclists, they're really loving this right here, So if there are people who want to get a badge and send it on back home or whatever, yeah, this is what we're talking about here. They're loving it, like whoa, because there's not a lot of lights. Okay. So this is another one when we have a flashlight. These are just some products here. And if you guys would like to get something, so we're gonna go through. Are you okay? You had a question?
Yeah. How much those lights cost?
Which one? This is 25. The big one? 55. 2 4. This is 25. Yeah. We can work something out. I like that. Yeah, so, we didn't talk about the lighters. Man, y'all ready for that one. We got the flashlights too. We're going to go through one more, and this is going to pretty much be quick, and then we have, so y'all might have comments and questions, and then I'm going to end it off with a word of updates, and then I might do a performance. Is that all right with y'all? We'll be out here by 8 just to let y'all know. So on that note, right, this one we just gonna get into it real. It's just gonna be general. A lot of times when people have land that has been passed down for generations, generation to generation, the people don't really know the value of that land. This is a big situation. One of the biggest issues I'm sure y'all can attest, right, is the issue of land being sold, resold, and all of that. No, that's more like blockchain, reselling, putting things on a blockchain. But what I'm referring to is now, what is the value of the things that's other than land? A big company might come over there and say, hey, I want that acre over there. You just think it's just an acre. You sell it for what you think an acre is, but you're not thinking about what could even be under there. Okay? Now, how do you know that? Now, you may not know that. You think you're just walking around on some, land, some dirt. But these other people, they know something, right? Without going too deep, Brother Ken, can you just talk about that? What ways that we can kind of understand the value of what we have other than land?
Absolutely. Again, we're back at the educational piece, right? Knowing. And so we just basically want to let people know. We will also house the ability to be able to survey the land, because that's basically what that is. We're surveying the land. Many times we will not know, we'll unknowingly give away resources that we don't know we have because we have not assessed it ourselves, excuse me. And so that will be one more opportunity that we have. We will have a fleet of drones, for example, that can go out and survey the land. The same way you can 3D print something, right? You can make something. You can also do what we call 3D scan. So a 3D scan is basically taking a picture, but in 3D. When you take a picture with your phone, it's a two-dimensional picture. It has length and it has width to it, right? Well, things in real life add a third dimension. They have depth as well. This is why you can actually see something. This is why it has size and girth and everything else like that. Well, that same aspect, we can actually take a digital picture of those things. So we can go and we can fly over, or we can deploy anything on the ground that will allow us to take digital imagery of the land and actually give you a picture of, number one, what you have, what's growing out there, how big it is, how small it is. But we'll also have the technologies that will be able to penetrate, like radar, LiDAR, and assess some of the resources that might be the levels below the soil. So we will have those abilities. Back to you, Ruben.
Significance of that right there, I think you do, you know, and it's about having the knowledge and understanding how it works. All right. Now, when it comes to the machinery, when it comes to the building of all these things, again, these are things that we are endeavoring, right? There are things where we have products, we have, services, okay? And I'm talking about 3E, et cetera. 3E, et cetera is the name of the company, all right? We actually are established in Liberia, incorporated in Liberia, 3E, et cetera, okay? And we have products and services. If people who want to do get an understanding, maybe you want to build a house in Liberia, you want to do a solar setup and things of that nature. Those are the things that we're providing. But again, if we don't know these things here exist, then we cannot make any progress. Okay? So the same way we come in here to do this event, right? How many of you are part of organizations and groups that you think there's some people who might be interested in this? How many of you know people who might have some money or investment and say, hey, I don't know what you got going on, but there's some folks I know who are doing things, blah, 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 right? Let's make the connections, all right? This is what this is all about. We are not sitting back and complaining about the situation when we have the ability to do it for ourselves. So the essence of this is what we're saying here is, in order for Liberia, in this case, to move forward, we need to form companies and build up the private sector and not always look to the government, right, to do everything for us, all right? We have to be innovative. We have to be creative, all right? And we're not saying that these are things that cannot be done. They can be done. You've seen examples here. So on that note, it's about 7:10. What time is it right now?
Right at 7 on the nose.
7 on the nose.
7 on the nose, right? So what we're gonna do right now, if you guys have some questions, right? Comments for the next 20 or so minutes, we'll go into that. And like I said, after that, I will leave off with some important announcements, updates, and then end off with a musical performance, right? All right, you guys. So who has questions? Let's see who has comments, questions, and anything. You have a question? All right. Okay. So you have a question? Right back there. Okay. No, I'm just asking, seeing the show of hands. That's all. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go down, right? So what we'll do, Brother Ken, if you can, if it's possible to take notes, we're gonna do 2 questions at a time, all right, to make it easier, all right? So, number 1, put your hand up. Next person. That lady, is that lady in the, who's it? I can't see the light. Okay, it's a guy in the back, all right. All right, so you're gonna be number 2 in this round, all right? We're gonna do 2 questions at a time, all right? So first question, this is the Vice President of the Liberian Association in the DC Metro Atlanta area.
So my question is, now we've seen everything and we know you guys are right. So if we take this to the community, how do people get in touch with you? How to be able to see the products and things like that?
Okay, so how do you get in touch with us? All right, number 2, question over there.
About how much does a 2-bedroom house cost in Liberia?
A 2-bedroom house in Liberia? Okay, all right. All right, well, I think those ones here, okay. Brother Ken, they're asking about getting in touch with us, right? I'll be straightforward with you guys. Y'all want to tell. Brother Ken, you heard the question?
Yes. You muted. I can't hear the last part.
Okay, so I'll address it now, pass it to him, okay? Social media, for any of you who are on social media, okay? We just put it up. The Liberian Renaissance Plan, okay? That may be hard. We're going to spell at the Liberian Renaissance Plan on Instagram, okay? All right. Direct contact. We're making ourselves accessible. If there's one thing that I've seen over the last few years, one of the people who have had great success in marketing is they just give their number out. So not everybody wants to give their number out, but it's okay. So in this case, I'm going to give you a number where you can reach directly, all right? Ken doesn't all give his number out there, but I'll give you our number. You set it up, all right? If you have your phone right now, take this number down. All right? 404 979 1931. If you can text the number and just let it be known if you plan on reaching out to me that you were at the DC Liberia Renaissance event so I can connect, all right? So text that. And one more time again, it's 404 979 1931. Okay? Text it. All right. 2-bedroom. What was the other question?
Approximate cost of 2-bedroom house in Liberia.
What's your phone name?
Putu Johnson. Putu Johnson. Okay. So to rent or to build, you see, it's kind of a little bit different. It works a little bit different in Liberia. It's not like the real estate, buying houses and things like that. A lot of people buy land and they build homes, or they rent homes. Okay, and it ranges. It depends on where you are. If you're closer in the city, or if you're in a rural area. But
you rent outside the city.
Wow. It's a range. You have a. What's a number that you think? It's a wide range. It's really
200 to 1,000 a month.
okay.
Let's say 500 to 1,000.
Yeah. So we could say, let's say from 400 to 1,000 a month. It all depends on where. Okay. Sometimes that let's just say from, I would say even 300.
Yeah.
From 300 to up, and you might even be able to get something better than that because you have people. Say that again. U.S. dollar. The Liberian economy is the Liberian dollar, and then you have the U.S. dollar. The ratio right now, I don't know. The last time I checked, it might be what 190 something Liberian dollars to one US dollar. So you can get a lot with your buck with the US with the greenback, but that's another story. Okay. All right. Questions?
Yeah, the larger solar light.
Yeah.
Did he print it or did he manufacture it? Is it a product that you are producing?
All right, let Ken respond to that. So the question is, Brother Ken, this particular light here, is this manufactured by you personally, or was it? So you can touch on that.
All right, so I'll remember, I think there's 3 that I'll be addressing. Number 1, how to contact us. So I too will give you my information. And like Pudu stated, make sure to please text that this is from the DC event so we can keep track of things and know who we're speaking with. So if you're ready, I'll give you a second. You have your phones ready. I'll give you my number as well. It's area code 832-275-9355. Again, it is 832-275-9355. Ken Echols, KenEchols. Let's see, the second one, I'm putting my context clues together because I don't think I heard it well enough, Pudu. So just for later, when they ask a question, if you could repeat it out loud like you just did, that'd be perfect. I'm assuming you were asking about the cost of being able to purchase or rent in Liberia. I will put this out there for you to think about as well. 3D printing a home can reduce your costs anywhere between 50 to 70% for building a traditional home. Just something to think about. So if you take your price of what you normally would have paid for whatever size home that you're building, 3D printing can reduce that anywhere up to 50 to 70% on that traditional price that you normally would have paid. All right, and so the last one, we're talking about manufacturing. We have a manufacturer in China that I'm getting these lights produced from. I don't have the means to do this myself, but this is one of those initiatives that we would like to do for ourselves. Right now, we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say, right? I'm using someone else's technology, but the great thing is I know how to take their technology and produce it in a fashion or stage it in a fashion to where I no longer have to continue to rely on them. And these are those initiatives that we're teaching. But the goal here is I'm getting the manufacturer, but I would like to change that directive. And some of these things that we're dropping in Africa, this is what we want to set up when we're talking about setting up our own shop and being able to manufacture for ourselves. Back to you, Pudu.
Words right now, before we actually have our factory and manufacturing institutions, right, to where we can actually produce, because he knows how to build this, right? But in order for us to produce it on a mass level, we have to have our factory, okay? So right now, they're being manufactured, have the connections, okay, to be able to do it. That will be able to get you these, again, on that wholesale level or the retail level. You can start off, you want to do 50, 100. As you know how wholesale works, the more you get, the better the price will be. And just to know, yeah, you might be able to go out there and try to get solar power lights and things. You might go to Walmart or Lowe's and things like that. But we're talking about quality, and we're also talking about knowledge, education that comes with it. You know the people who you're dealing with, and that can help and assist you with it. So you might go and tell a friend, oh, I know some people doing solar power. They might say, oh, let's go here, let's go do it. But this is different. If you go and buy something from Walmart or go on the line, you might not be able to have access to the people if something happens to it or to be able to assist you. This is a movement we have going on. So it's all part of the value of what we're bringing to you at 3D, etc., through this Liberian Renaissance project, okay? Questions? Comments? How you You're doing it, Miss Erica. Yeah. Shout out to you and crew Oasis.
Thank you.
Indeed, recognize you.
Thank you. So one of the things you said earlier, and you said well, is that the Liberian economy is rocky, right? It's not up to par. And so something that I think about often is that a lot of the troubles that we see on the ground, by way of violence, by way of stealing, are from people who don't have and feel like they don't have a way to get the things that they need. And so it's, let me go and take from you, because you clearly have it, you found a way, and this is an easier way for me to get it, or this feels more accessible than any other way that they can see to get the things that they need. So when you showed the street lights, my first thought was someone is going to steal it. And so then my question is, have you all given any thought to the use of technology to help some of the social problems that are happening on the ground, so that when people do come with these innovations, they're not running into, okay, we lit up the whole SD Cooper Road, but all the lights are gone, and they're selling it to people in Brewerville.
Indeed. Thank you so much for that. I'm glad you brought it up, right? It's interesting. You actually had a chance to, to support one of the Liberia Youth Initiative, and she supported the Liberia Youth Initiative. I also want to recognize my brother, who's in Liberia. I referenced him earlier. He's been back in Liberia since 2010. All right, initiating the movement. Okay, the mental, all right, the social, right. So, as I said earlier, right, the way that we got the mission and we got the purpose, we got the vision, was to focus on the social, the mental, the way that we relate to each other, right? And because if there's no peace, what's the use of all of these things here, right? They get destroyed. If people's minds are messed up, right? If people are not in the right state of mind, or going, acting out of whack, right? They're going to destroy the things that are very institutions that are there set up for them, to help. So it's very important for us to implant ourselves, right, in a social way, and not just come. I mean, we didn't even have the ability to do it at first, right? Now, in doing that, we've been able to develop very, very strong relationships with, let's say, people in the population that are often neglected. All right. One of the words that are thrown, one of the words that's been used in the last 10 years that has come up is this word called the Zogo. Okay, the Zogo can be, I guess you can say, you can relate it to what, like maybe a crack addict or a street thug, or somebody who just don't got, like, not even like a street person, but somebody who just don't really got nothing going on for themselves, and they just out floating and don't got nothing much going on, right? These are many of these people who were child soldiers during the war, fought the war as youngsters, and then when the war ended, there were maybe a few programs for rehabilitation, but there was no institutions and things set up to help reintegrate them back into the society. So when you go into Liberia right now, you go there, what we call hotspots and ghettos and different areas where these people bond together, right? They smoke. There's this thing called Kush now, you know what I mean? That is deteriorating and destroying the youth right now. It's in Sierra Leone as well, okay? Okay, and that's another. I'm gonna touch on that in the next segment. So to your point, with what we are doing, by this being attached to a movement, we also have the education, community awareness to teach the people the value of these things, right? To respect it, and also to create a protection where people know that, hey, this is not something that you steal, right? And then also we also have the technology. We have the ways that we're going to set it up so that it's not easily susceptible to those type of things. But a very important thing is that we're not just putting these things out there without the education, community awareness for people to know the value and the importance of these things there. And not only that, there are opportunities where we can employ these individuals. And I will pass it on to Brother Ken to give you an example, okay, of how we can clean up some of the trash, right? And recycle those things and create 3D products. Ken, can you speak on that?
So thank you, sister, for the question. Excellent question. And Pudu kind of touched on it. I was going to chime in. He kind of touched on it and pull it up. I'm going to bring a different aspect infrastructurally. So you make a great point. People are starving. They're anxious. They're hungry. They're angry. And so what we have to do is we have to empower them. One of the problems with industry going on in the continent right now is you have all these foreign entities coming and taking from Africa. They're taking, right? Give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. Nobody's giving back. So the first thing we're going to do when we establish ourselves is immediately start giving back. Well, how do we start giving back? Like he said, we're going to employ people. We're not coming to slide in and sneak out at the back door. We're planting roots. We are of Liberia, right? So we are with the community. So we establish a business that is going to thrive locally, that is going to employ locally, that is going to keep those black dollars there as much as we can locally, and we can start to eliminate some of that anger or that starvation or whatever is driving people for the theft and for everything. Hey, you don't have to do that. We can empower everybody to do these same things, right? Okay, so then we talk about the different ways that we can employ and what we can do to clean up the environment and the communities. One of the ideas that I have with 3D printing, one of the ways we create these products is you have plastics, you have hard plastics that are melted down, and then that melted plastic is placed accurately by the machine in different places. Like if you think like a hot glue gun, we've all used a hot glue gun before. You got that solid stick of glue, you stick it in the back of the glue gun, it heats it up and melts it, and you put the molten plastic or the glue where you want it to go, it cools and dries, right? Okay, we can actually print things from recycled materials. If you guys are drinking bottled water right now, that plastic bottle is made from what we call PETG, P-E-T-G, right? So any and all these bottles can be gathered up and they can be scrapped and recycled by being remelted to create other products, right? So imagine us creating a recycling program where we can employ the kids if they have so much time on their hands. Hey kids, you go out and on the beaches, in the neighborhoods, wherever you find these specific plastics, you bring them to us. We'll pay you a certain amount of money for however many kilos you bring to us, right? So now we're empowering and employing, as well as giving an initiative to clean up. It's all about empowering the people, right? So we can imagine putting some of those types of things in place, what difference we can make locally and in these different communities. And we can rinse and repeat from one place to the next. Back to you, Putin.
So I've got two more questions, right? You're on Baba Psycho? All right, go ahead.
Okay. Are you aware of open source software, open source hardware?
Okay.
That wasn't the whole question, but are you aware of it?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I'm not hearing is the socialization of technology in order to stay in a society. I'm hearing products made in China being sold to Africans who have no control or knowledge how to create them themselves, and no discussion on how to build up societal skills to create a society that is organic to where they are living in that environment with those people and culture. So one of the things I'm involved with is open source software, which is communally created. It's not controlled by corporations. The source, the coding is available to anybody and everybody. There's an open, in fact, there's an open hardware movement where tractors and other things are being designed and the designs are open so anybody can use them. And in fact, there's an open agriculture movement where hydroponics and other things, all these techniques are communally distributed and taught. It's not owned by corporations, it's not owned by for-profit, it's to the benefit of everybody, and all you gotta do is use it and learn how to do it. So I'm concerned, because this is a big issue in Africa, is that the people in these countries do not have the technical understanding and knowledge to be able to produce those things to the necessity of those areas. If you live in a desert area, your needs are different if you live in a jungle. And if you live on the seacoast, the things that you have available and necessary are different if you live in mountains, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to understand from a holistic level what your philosophical goals are, because if it's just selling products, you're just a capitalist.
No,
That's
that's not,
a question. It's a question. That's what I'm saying. I know I'm Mr. Early. That's why I'm asking this, because I don't see a societal social component from the time I walked into it. I've heard selling products, buying products, distributing products, but products have been the problem in Africa, not the solution, because products are brought in by other people, controlled by other people, and the profits are taken out by other people. So that's my question, because I think the whole philosophy of open source technology should be a central component of it, which means that you're going to have to teach a lot of people, going to have to learn how to code. If it was me, I would push coding software as a primary technology, because you don't need machinery, you don't need manufacturing, all you need is a computer and a brain. And that's easy to get, because all you got to do is have internet access, and you can learn all this stuff online, and that's how you learn programming in the first place.
All right, yeah, appreciate that. So, one of the things, and again, I mean, you alluded to it, you weren't here from the beginning, right?
No.
So, do you think that could have affected the perspective that you have?
That's why I asked the question, because it's a question. I wasn't.
Yeah, but the reason why I said that is the way that you asked the question. You didn't acknowledge initially that you missed it. You just asked it in a way and kind of insinuated that we were going out there and being capitalistic. That's the way that the question was framed. It may not have been their intent, but that's the way that it was perceived. Okay. The reason I bring it out, and I bring that up very respectfully. Okay, because there are people out there who, if you ask that question, they will take immediate offense and become defensive. Okay, and one of our problems as a people is sometimes we don't know how to communicate, ask questions, or say certain things. You know what I mean? And then before you know it, there's a miscommunication. And in this very, very small, minuscule, interaction here, it could have deterred the whole spirit unintentionally, okay? And from an accountability standpoint is, if I go to a place and I know I wasn't there from the very beginning, and there's somebody that doesn't understand, there's a certain way that I will approach that question in a way to not make it seem like I don't know what I'm, like I said, that's the point there. Now, to your question, which is a very great question, you came at a point where, yes, you see all these products over here, this and this and that. So from walking in and then you hear, what's going on? It's a very genuine question. Oh, I thought you guys were this. Now, the first half of this program here was history, okay? Knowledge, the foundation, the spirit, the energy to set the tone, all right, before we got to this, okay? And it's very important that we approach our solution in that way in this time, because there are many people who look like us who do what you just said. So I'm not saying that's not a genuine question. You do have to know what is your intent. And to your question, all of those things have been very much considered in this. And it's the very reason why the way that we are presenting this to our people is not in a way where we just come and, hey, look, see what we got. It's connected, again, to a movement that has been started and been moving before we were around, but inherited in the last 10, 15 years. We've had these boots on the ground, all right, where we weren't selling products. We're working hands-on with the people. No profit, no nothing, sacrifices, right? So as we move forward, the business model that we are looking at is something like humanistic capitalism, if you want to call it. Something that doesn't put the profit over the people, okay? You talk about making use of the ecosystem. We're talking about technology coding. We talked about coding. We talked about blockchain earlier. You know, these are things that we are incorporating within our plan. So to your point, definitely, all points are considered, and that's what we are integrating within our program. If you want to get more detail, we would love to connect with you, because you did say that you're involved in some of these things. So that's a great way for us to talk about, okay, what do you have going on? How can we collaborate? How can we see about how we can help each other, you know, make this whole thing go together? I think that would be the last question. I don't know if Brother Ken wanted that. Matter of fact, okay, a statement, and then we'll.
So, I feel like there's a certain point where we haven't been capitalistic. We should be capitalistic, and we should own the capital. As far as us starting it out, they lack the funds to actually produce everything themselves at first. But as they build it up, then they can hire people. Then they can manufacture in Liberia. That's kind of this is based off of what I heard. I was only here for like an hour or so, but that's the frame that I looked at it as. It's like you got to start it out first, have the money, then employ people, then teach people about everything else. But if you don't have the funds, how are you going to start a school? How are you going to teach people to code? How are you going to teach people how to do any of these things unless you have the funds? So you need the money. That's the big thing for it. And I think as far as, I think it's a fear that Black people have about trusting other Black people. And to be honest, it's like, that's the only way we can have any success, in my opinion. Like, we have to look at each other and say, hey, I trust you. Don't fuck me over. So I'm putting all my trust in you. I'm going to give you my money. And then let's build it up. And afterwards, let's all make sure that the next generation has enough information, the capital, to be able to actually build on what we did. This is how you had people working there for the last 15 years or so. It's because you see, okay, we need this at this moment, but at the same time, we still need funds, because you're just working here and you're just connecting with people. It's cool, but there's struggle. The struggles come from the lack of control, the lack of capital, and that's really what we need for it. That's the biggest thing that I've seen.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you put it. Literally, that's what it is. We don't have the funds to manufacture in the way that we want to. We understand the global supply chain right now. China is manufacturing and doing what they're doing. Until we get to that point, we have to move forward on that. I was saying, let me get Ken say your remarks, because I have to get into the last. No, it's cool. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, Brother Ken, if you want to touch on one or two.
Yes, I'd love to speak to that. So thank you for the first brother. Good question, because we have to be concerned about those things. We have to watch out for the wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's ironic that the second brother, thank you to the second brother, he actually stole a little bit of what I was going to say in response to that. So number one, to answer your question, brother, the first brother, in case you did miss it, one of the first things that I talked about was education. Absolutely, that's the key. So we talk about giving back, right? How are we going to give back? The first thing I want to do is educate the people in Liberia or any other of the African countries on how we do these things that we call our expertise areas here in the United States. For example, we go over there. This is literally what I said earlier. we go over there and we start teaching them how we do these things on an expert level. Number two, on the capitalistic side, right? We talk about our company that is legally incorporated to do business in Liberia, which means now we can establish ourselves, we can create a footprint, and we can hire people locally, right? So what other foreign entities are coming in to Africa to set up business, to hire the local people, and to give them competitive wages so they don't have to eat off of scraps? We're trying to change that whole thing. But even if, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, even if we didn't educate the people, even if we didn't come in and give back as much, right? What if we did come in and all we did was sold products? Isn't that better to buy products from people that look like you versus any other foreign entities that don't even live in the country, right? So we have to weigh those things. And the last thing I'll say is to the point of technologies. I have a background in IT and web development as well. And I initially would have thought exactly what you would have thought, brother, that we all think that these high level skill sets are the answer, and they aren't. Because I'll say this again, Africa has not gone through its own industrial revolution yet. It is still operating very primitive. We can't even reach blockchain if we can't even build a round steel wheel with perfection consistently, with tooling and processes. I have literally tried to collaborate with different high-level companies to do manufacturing, and they didn't have the means to keep up because they were doing something that we do here in the US, where we can create a perfectly square plastic container consistently over and over again. We're talking about repeatability. These brothers and sisters in Africa are having to do this by hand. So if they're doing this by hand, there's a whole lot of error. So before we can get to the coding part, we got to have just the manufacturing set up to where we can consistently produce reliable products. And this is what we're going to get to first before we can get to all the high level stuff. Back to you, Puda.
For that, you have a question coming?
No, just real quick, man. I just want to say, the whole presentation is all about interfacing with other people that have knowledge, people that are already doing work, and we went all the way back to 1900. I want to make that clear, and kept going forward of the consistent work going on the ground in Africa, not here. But it's important for those of us here to have knowledge, to understand, repatriate, but not just physically. Repatriate your business, repatriate your work, and interface with each other. So I just wanted to stress, the main thing I said was the educational background that we're putting behind this globally. And I gave the whole spill on that, and Sam gave the whole spill. So what I'm saying is, we need more ideas and more thoughts. Definitely. So the more we come together, that's the movement. The movement is not just, in fact, we came here primarily to address Liberia and to reach out to the issue working in Liberia. But it's happening.
It's happening
all over. I want to make that clear, that movement. And one of the most, you said it, one of the most important things we got to do as Africans is to connect with those of us that are conscious, that are working and not talking, and bring the work to the table.
That's a key point. I'm glad. Thank you so much for bringing that. You see, all the people that presented here, we come from a background of grassroots organizing, doing the work, okay, for years. I got my big cousin over there, Lord, too. He remember when me and my brother we was young back in the day, up there in good old back in the day, right? He's seen the different stages, man. We're not as doing the work, right? We was out with part of marches, rallies in the streets, bringing people together, doing like for years. All right. Now, at the end of the day, we reached a point where it's very important to get the people who are truly committed and passionate to connect with people, the minds who have the technology and skills now, and make that connect. Sometimes there's a gap. So what we are doing is we're bringing things together. Okay. So on that note, Brother Ken, we're getting ready to I'm gonna end this off here with some key, very important information. This is the part where I'm gonna get into my zone and end it off with a performance. Indeed. If you can please cue up that NWO video. You see, this is one of my signatures here. I go by the Liberian American Pan-African. And for those who were here earlier, we talked about Liberia, the history, right? That is often misunderstood and talked about, you know, but people don't really understand and know, right? And then on this is the Liberian flag. This is the red, black, and green flag, right? And one thing that I learned that really motivated me over the years was to be sure to tell the true story about Liberia, okay? Now, what happened to Liberia is that because Liberians and people around the world don't understand what happened to Liberia, Liberia has unfortunately been utilized as a place to disrupt a lot of the movements that have occurred over the years. Okay, and what happens is people don't understand that, and they talk about Liberia, especially some other Africans. They say they have a very bad taste about Liberia. Then when the war happened and Ebola, they all them Liberian people, they talk about. But the reality is, World War I, World War II, and many other crises over the years, Liberia was pressured and bribed and forced to do certain things that were not in the best interest of Liberia, the continent, right? So I want to show a video right here of somebody who some of you all may be familiar with, okay? His name is Charles Taylor, who was the former president of Liberia, who today actually happens to be his birthday. I want you to listen to one of his last speeches before he went into exile and then went to jail. Brother Sam, could you please play the video?
Could we continue fighting? Yes. But above all else, the people must matter. I say to my colleagues, the chairman of the African Union, the chairman of ECOWAS, Africa is at a crossroads. This new one world government, we must be very careful. Decisions are not being made in our capitals. They are being made in foreign capitals. The Liberian people must be left to determine their destiny.
Has anybody heard that speech before? Or maybe you heard it, but anybody heard that speech before? Maybe you didn't pay attention, or they didn't come clear, right? What did he say? This one world what? Government. What was he talking about? Have you heard any other African leaders? This is in 2003. Say that openly in a speech. The reason I bring that up is I'm not here to talk about what Charles Taylor did or didn't do or this and that, right? Because nobody's perfect. We know there are things that he needs to speak to. But what I am here to say is that the real reason that Charles Taylor was removed, the international community removed him, right, was because there was certain rhetoric and certain information that he was starting to transmit to the Liberian people, and he also had influence in the regional area. They talked about his influence in Sierra Leone, Guinea, Ivory Coast, and all of those things, right? The reason why this is important, when you put it in the context, is because Charles Taylor was where before he went back to Liberia? He was actually in jail in Massachusetts, right? And as the story goes, he escaped, right, with a blanket, right? As the legend goes, Liberians talk about it behind the scenes, but they don't really talk about it openly, and they don't really push for answers. But when you listen to some of his testimonies and listen to some of the things, he goes into detail about how exactly he escaped, who he talked to, and what he did. What was Charles Taylor exposed to? What type of information and plans did he know about when it comes to this one world government that we are now starting to see unfold right before our very eyes? And that when he went back to Liberia on a mission, right? And then he went and he deviated from the mission and started doing his own thing, that they started to cut ties from him. But the reality is, unfortunately, our brother Charles Taylor and some other Liberians also participated in the assassination of one of our other great leaders during that time in the mid-'80s, somebody by the name of Thomas Sankara. Okay? When you go into the testimonies of Charles Taylor and individuals like Prince Johnson, they talk about how they went in a group of Liberians who were part of the group that aided in the demise of Thomas Sankara, who was one of the most forward-thinking leaders in the 1980s. Again, Liberia was used. Liberians were used. During the OAU, the Monrovia group was created, all right, to combat the Casablanca group, which pushed to federalize the continent. Okay? You go take it back years earlier, Garvey, the Liberian government, right? They did a deal with Firestone instead of partnering up with Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. Let's even go to the 1970s. There was a leader by the name of William Tolbert who spoke very, very, very outspoken about the issue that we're talking about now, Israel and Gaza. He spoke against apartheid. He actually was one of the first Liberian or African presidents to address the Joint Congress in the U.S. in 1976 at the 200-year anniversary of America's independence. At the time of his assassination, which there was foreign influence, but often not talked about, it goes on one individual, okay? Doe, President Samuel Doe. At the time of his assassination in 1980, William Tolbert was the head of the Organization of African Unity. The very year before he was killed, in 1979, they had the Organization of African Unity. They had the convention where all of the African heads of states, you have people like even musicians like James Brown, Hugh Masekela, Mama Africa, all convened in Monrovia, Liberia, in April of 1979. The type of influence that President Tolbert had at that time, okay, where they had the predecessor to the navigational system, GPS, Omega, the Omega Towers, okay, the type of technology that Liberia had at that time. Liberia was in a prime position. He was in a prime position to help usher the nation, the continent of Africa, in a way that would have led to be more self-sufficient. Within 1980, all of that was erased. Now, the reason I put that history, which there's much more, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it there, is because right now we're at a crossroads again. Just a few days ago, the Russian army went into Burkina Faso, okay? Just a few days ago, all right? Just this morning, a few of the African nations, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, they've removed themselves from ECOWAS, right? So what's going on right now in this area in West Africa? We have a new president in Liberia. What is going to be his decision? What are going to be the way that Liberia is going to go? I'm here to say that any and all weapons formed against us and our people has destroyed its creators and enforcers in the name of the Most High God. Okay? Now, this word that I'm giving is a spiritual. This is prophecy here. We are saying that we're in the time now. We are in the time now where the days and things that used to happen in the past are no more. We are awakened. It's a new spirit. It's a new energy. And we are here to conquer. So on that note, I'm going to go into this piece that I call RBG Reloaded, red, black, and green. Let's just say third time's a charm. Because in the 1820s, my great-great-great-grandfather by the name of Elijah Johnson played a significant role in the founding of Liberia. 100 years later, there was Gabriel Johnson, who was Marcus Garvey's right-hand man, and also the mayor of Monrovia at the time. Things did not fizzle all the way. This, 100 years later, this time now, in this generation, we are here to ensure that Liberia stands as the land of liberty. And the truth is told. Brother Sam, if we can go into this RBG Reloaded, we're going to end it off on that. Red, black, and green, connected with Liberia, connected with Liberia. Taking the mental, handle business, ain't no thing. Time to clean up the mess, it's a landfill. Corona flow, make the whole world stand still. RBG reloaded, 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 reloaded. RBG reloaded, 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 reloaded. They shall acknowledge we need everything stolen from us, plus an apology, talking reparations and restitutions. But we need to heal for the damage of these institutions. Let's put emotions to the side. This is logic here. RBG still alive. Hear me loud and clear. All enemies of progress, trap in fear. Now with a sight to the third eye. Stop and stare. Word to the wise, this is season of judgment. In other words, make way for the Most High government. That's it. That's a lot of verse there. Again, I would like to thank everybody who made it here to be a part of this occasion. As we said, we have products here. And for those of you all who want to give a clear heart contribution to the movement that we have on the ground, Liberia Heals, the number that you had earlier, 404-979-1931, that is where you can give a clear heart contribution. And if there's something great, significant from there, we will put together a short impact project in the name of Sankofa Bookstore and present it to you all here to show what you guys contributed to the movement
via that Clear Heart donation. Thank you all so much for being a part of the Liberian Renaissance Plan, the DC edition. We are getting ready to see our next city. Okay, we may do Minnesota or Philly. We're still working on it. So y'all know people in other areas, towns, cities that need to be a part of it. If you want us to do a presentation for your group, organization, whatever, we're available. We're available. All right, let's get it. Let's go. Thanks, Baba Senghor. Thanks, Brother Sam. Since Maleka, since the video, man, the Sam Kofa bookstore. Thank everybody over there. And thanks to the leaders of the Liberian Association, Erica, Johnny, man, y'all the best.